know. How is he in that?
I don't know. He sleeps with, when he was little, he had a blanket. He just called it Scurdy. He called it. He always slept with Scurdy. So I got a big blanket years ago at Cabela's for Christmas. And he goes to bed with us. He's always Baby, you just let me know.
Okay, this will have about 2 minutes.
Okay.
And I gotta figure out how to adjust this.
So that gives me time to go potty because
We're-
it would just me.
Take care of it now.
So Amy had a birthday, huh? Yeah. Sweet. That was a precious picture of her with Janelle when she was a baby. You know, the year you graduated from El Dorado High School was the year I was born. 58. And I'm a July birthday like you. I'm a July birthday.
Oh, really?
Yours is when? July what?
Do what?
July what is your birthday?
28.
Mine's the 14th, exactly half. Are you flirting with her? Are you flirting with her? Are you flirting with her? She's taken.
It was a gentleman from the Wichita tribe.
Really use one of these cards. Look at all those smiles.
I know. One of those? That looks fun. You can carry stuff on it. Put your remote on it. You can sit. You can sit.
That work for you?
Thank you.
I'm always hot as Polly. Special sit now. Oh my gosh. What's up with us? We can go there another time.
Sherry here?
I'm right here.
Sue?
Yes.
Right here. Can I just knock it off?
Oh.
Oh, no.
No,
There
it
is.
just flipped. It just flipped.
Nope. Nope.
Looks like you can adjust the size on it too.
Do
The
what?
height.
There you go.
Hello. Nope.
There we go. Thank you everyone for coming to our speaker series. We do this on the third Thursday of the month, so we look forward to many more to come. My name is Bailey Martin Rutliff. I'm the Executive Director here at Kansas Arlington, and I'm so glad you could all join us. They want to introduce themselves, so I'm going to let them.
Sound good? Are you picking that?
Yep.
And that? Okay. Let's see.
We'll just
How it
talk and
works.
see if we need to adjust.
Feel like this. Yeah. Well, I'm Sonja Sommers Milbourn, and
Yeah, you'll have to pass it.
okay. All right. If you want a song, you got one. Welcome and thank you so much for coming. I'm Sonja Sommers Milbourn, and first of all, I want to thank Bailey and the staff here at the museum, which is such a little bit louder. Okay, a little bit louder. I want to thank them so much. The museum is such a treasure, and the staff certainly is, and thank you for the opportunity of doing this. You're kind of our guinea pigs. I've given talks just myself for the past decade, but I thought, let's change it up and have a conversation. And I've known Janelle since she and my daughter ran together for El Dorado Middle School, high school, but most notably, we spent hours on a bus, 24-hour trip to Washington, D.C. almost 10 years ago for the Women's March, which wasn't a march because we were among about three-quarter of a million other people in DC for the Women's March. It was more like we were in place.
We just stood there.
24 hours, 3 buses from WSU, and it was quite a wonderful experience. And so anyway, that's how I know Janelle as well. And I'm going to let her introduce herself a little bit, and then her father.
Thank you, Sonja. My name is Janelle Jeffrey Tomlin. I am from El Dorado, lived here all my life, as well as my family and my dad. Just, I guess, a little about me. I'm a social worker. I work for Rainbows United, and I work with kids 0 to 5. But growing up, I have always listened to my dad's stories about just El Dorado in general. And I can tell you so many things. I get them a little bit confused sometimes, but he's here to remind me. So that's why I've brought him along with me. So yeah, this is my dad, Harlan. Do you want to say something?
That was enough. You know my name now. Okay, can everybody hear me? Yeah, my name is Harlan Tomlin. I was born and raised here in El Dorado. I went to high school.
What year?
You really want to know? 1940. There may be some of you here that's pretty close to me and age-wise. Oh, okay. And I'm prior to coming back to El Dorado, I worked for Texaco Oil Company out in Larned, Kansas, and was out there for a while, and then decided we wanted to come back home, and this is always going to be my home. And so I'm happy to be here today, and I don't see any familiar faces. I see 1 or 2 people, but are there any here that grew up here in El Dorado?
Did you grow up here in El Dorado? I'm sorry, he's asking, did you grow up in El Dorado? We did, both of us.
Oh, did you? Did you?
Andersons and the Redburns and the McCoys.
The McCoys.
Yeah.
Where's the McCoy? Are you a McCoy?
The Hatfields are over there.
Okay.
This is Larry McCoy's wife.
Okay. I went to school with David. Yeah. And so anyway, it's nice to be back home. We've been here, I guess it's not even like we left now. We've been here over 20 years. So back here in over 30. But anyway, it's nice to be back home again. And so maybe I'll get a chance to talk to some of you and reminisce about El Dorado. Okay. Thank you.
Well, what the topic of this really is the hidden history of El Dorado. And hidden history includes so much. There's a lot of hidden history, but certainly for me, I did grow up in El Dorado. My husband Clint did as well. And the hidden history of the Black community was of interest to me in particular because I grew up at a certain point. We moved to the corner of Oak and 12th. If you understand where the Riverside area is in El Dorado. So to the south of me was Riverside. And at certain points, Harlan was at the other end of the block, actually, from where I grew up, but he was gone because born the year he graduated out. He was gone, but I was friends with his sister. But so the further you got to the south, there were just areas of just abject poverty, and the roads were bad. That was like a truck route and so forth. And then across 12th Street was literally Country Club Road, and to the Country Club. And so I went to Grandview, and I feel like I was really uniquely positioned there because I had a really diverse group of classmates that I went to school with. The students that came from Riverside and those that came from the more affluent Country Club edition. And it was one of the newer schools after Brown versus Board of Education. I think the fall of '55, I think was when the first classes were there. So anyway, that what interested me was there was a certain point in my life, and this is embarrassing. This is a strange feeling to understand invisibility more. As a woman, I do understand a little bit more. But there was a certain point in my life that I thought, where are the kids that grew up, the Black children that I went to school with? Because in every class that I had at Grandview, I had Black classmates. But what happened to them? Where are they? And so I began thinking about that and feeling that was just the oddest question. And I asked Harlan if we could go to coffee. So this has been over a decade ago, we've come full circle.
Yeah.
Which so I'm so grateful to him that he's here today, because he really got me started in the right direction. I've gotten into some really dark history of El Dorado that was troubling to me. And when he walked into McDonald's with his red folder, and I remember that as a red folder, and he said he wanted to share with me the achievements, the contributions that the Black community had made to El Dorado. And I'm so grateful to that, because that really helped me to have a perspective that wasn't focused solely on oppression and persecution and so forth. But that is a part of the hidden history. But also with the hidden history are those incredible accomplishments. Going back to 1860, because I'm really doing my research from Chelsea Township. It's where the first Black citizens that I've located in the census records, and they're included in El Dorado history. And then they did move into the El Dorado community. They weren't here very long. They were the Gaskins family, but they came up before the Civil War. They came up in 1860. They're in the census records. So anyway, that's how I got started with my research, and it's just a passion for me. Thank you. It's just a passion for me. Among other things that I research the whole El Dorado community and have Facebook pages for every single aspect of life and history in El Dorado, from literary and performing arts to sports to the schools, the histories of the churches to histories of health and medicine. You name it, I set up a Facebook group for it because it really helps to organize my research. But hidden in plain sight, I had a question for Janelle. And what does hidden in plain sight? What does hidden in plain sight mean to you?
Thank you, Sonja. So we have these questions prior. I am a studier, and I have to have notes, and I sometimes can't speak just off the top of my head. So a couple things that I really wanted to make sure that I hit on was that this speaks to experiences and truths that have always been around El Dorado, but have been hidden parts, because so much of that history has either been overlooked, suppressed, reframed. A lot of things may be reframed or minimized. That didn't necessarily seem as important. And I know Sonja will kind of go into this a little bit, but kind of like the news articles that she found. You'll realize there's so many more articles from the Black community, even some written by my great-grandmother, because El Dorado wouldn't publish them in the newspaper. They sent them to other places to get them published. And so it's kind of like those things were still happening here, and there was some amazing groups, clubs, businesses, organizations. My grandfather owned how many businesses in El Dorado?
At least two that I know of.
Okay, at least two. And for a Black man too, that's a pretty big accomplishment, especially in El Dorado. So yeah, I just think a lot of that's important for us to know, and it's important to shape a community, not to feel bad about it, but to honor it, and just to be proud, and the kids and generations that come after can be proud too, and just know what was going on. So yeah.
Does your dad live?
Do you want to?
What does hidden history mean to you, Harlan?
Thank you for
Plain
having
sight.
me. I feel a little uncomfortable because I don't see any more people other than my Black people in the room, other than my daughter and me. And
Do you want me to hold the mic?
okay, believe it or not, when I grew up, as I said, I was born and raised here, born at Susan B. over there. The room I was born in probably is still there, probably built around it. But anyway, it was nice to come back home. I spent a lot of years away from here. And growing up, it was our aim, I'm talking about the few black kids my age that went to school together, was to get out of El Dorado because there was nothing here for us. And so we all talked about what we were going to do after we graduated. And so I said, well, I'm going to catch the first bus out of town. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I ended up in the military. I spent, 5 years in the military. And in Vietnam, not 5 years in Vietnam, but 2 years there. And then was glad to get back home. And I went back to college. I started out at Butler here in El Dorado. And then after that, I went in the military. And I tell you, El Dorado has always had a big place in my heart. I don't care how old I was or whatever, where I left. I've lived in different places, different states, and the military really helped me to grow up and to learn about life. And when you're in a place where there are a lot of people from other parts of the country, for example, I did a lot of my basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. And a lot of the people that came there, that was basic training. A lot of people that came there were from Chicago, New York, all over the place. And they could not understand my accent. And everybody used, where are you from? El Dorado, Texas? I'm sorry, no. And I'd have to go through this long history of where El Dorado was. And no, there weren't any Indians out here. Well, a few, but anyway. And so it's always nice to see how, and it made me look inside and see how I made it. Getting away from El Dorado helped me to appreciate El Dorado a lot more than I had in the past. There were always a lot of good friends. Excuse me, I'm about to lose my voice.
You need some water? You can take a break.
No, that's all right.
Okay.
And so, another thing, I graduated from high school in 1958, and I don't know if there's anybody here that's close to that time, but a lot. And I wanted to, excuse me. When it came to, and there's one thing I wanted to hit on. There's a historical place, Sonja. I don't know. You know where the what's the plumbing place there on 8th and
Steve?
On 8th Street. Oh, the cooling,
yeah,
Carlisle's?
Carlisle.
Oh, sure, your father,
Huh?
your dad,
Did he own that building?
No,
painted, right?
that wasn't he knew the people, but he went to school
Went to
there.
school there, yeah.
Yeah, and that was the elementary school, and we fortunately didn't have to go there when I went to finish grade school is where I went there, kindergarten, I think.
Okay.
But anyway, but I noticed that building was still there, and I don't know if any of you all remember Mr. Case or Mrs. Case. She was a high school teacher. Well, her brother used to be the bus driver for that area out there, and so I think he stayed there. He stayed there even after we had graduated from high school. But anyway, I don't want to go on and on about things.
Harlan, was it known as Riverside School?
No,
It wasn't, okay.
I don't remember the exact name,
Okay.
but it was there.
But it was in the Riverside,
It
so
was-
it's talking about where the North Main Park is, on the corner
Yes,
that's across the
yeah.
street, right?
Yes, and so, but anyway, as Sonja was saying, is having lived there long enough to see that integration came, but as my daughter knows and that I can attest to, is that we never, integration was not a part of our psyche back then. We couldn't go to the movies. I'm talking about black people now. Then we had several movies. There was the El Dorado Theater, Fox Theater, the Roxy, and the Fight. I don't know why they called it the Fight. But anyway, I can't even remember now where they were located. Well, the El Dorado Theater is still there. But anyway, and getting to like entrepreneurs, there were several here in El Dorado. I don't know how many of you know the Garlands. That name should be familiar to most of you here. Ab Garland had a shoe shop. He fixed shoes, shined shoes, and he was there I don't know how many years, but I'm sure it was over 20 or 30 years. And my father owned a janitorial service here for probably, I don't know, 30 years. And so there were a couple. Oh, Joe Hayes, do you remember the Hayeses? He was a mechanic. He had his own business down there on, can't remember the streets, right over. Yeah, okay. And anyway, but all of them either passed away or moved. The Hayeses moved to Denver, Colorado, and they had a son, Jerry Hayes. I don't know if you remember him or not. He was quite the athlete and went on to play football at Kansas State. And then after that, he went to Howard University back in DC and got a degree in dentistry. And then he moved out to Denver with his and brought his folks. He was responsible for getting them out there, and he just passed away. I met him about 3 or 4 years ago. But just trying to give you a few things, ideas of how things have progressed and what it did. There were black people here that were quite successful, and trying to think of someone else that who was the other one? Who? The Neelys, yeah. The Neelys, the Garlands, one of the Garlands, Calvin, he would have been, I think, my brother's age, and he moved away, but he graduated from, I can't remember now where he graduated from, but he also was a dentist and is still practicing as far as I know, and trying to see, recall anything. So you know as much about.
Well, what's interesting about what Harlan's saying is when people would see me doing research, well, what is the research you know, I say with the Black heritage of El Dorado, we've never been that many blacks living in El Dorado. And that really was such a strange question because I thought, well, how many is enough to warrant interest and, you know, consideration and research? Well, let me tell you, I first of all decided after I visited with Harlan and really got the flavor of him sharing the entrepreneurship, the achievements, athletic to occupational. I realized that I wanted to locate every single black name I could find throughout the beginning of time. I mean, I go, when people talk about their stuff, they like history. Clint, I bought a home, it was built in 1880. We like old history. So I really was going to the very beginning, and I could do Kansas census records before they opened up as far back with the federal U.S. census records. And unfortunately, I mean, it was racism as far as identification in the little parentheses of city directories or census records. But if I saw a C in parentheses in the city directories, and I got started here before they had them online. They did that up to about the late 1920s. So I could identify a lot of people that I would not have ever known their names. I wouldn't have known more than the ones I knew, the Garlands and the Neelys and the Tomlins and the Reynolds and so forth. And so, or the kids, you know, the kids that I got grown up with. But this opened up a whole world for me when I realized in the newspapers, I knew that those names, they might not have colored or in parentheses or refer to somebody's race, but I would know those names then because they had been available to me in the census record. And I'll talk more about this. That's one of the questions that you'll be asking. But to give you an idea of what's that? Oh, no,
Oh,
I'm
no,
good.
we're good.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
sorry.
those books?
Yeah,
Okay,
sorry.
I'm good,
No, we're
thanks.
good.
Thanks, Bailey. Well, so.
Oh,
to
here,
give
let
you
me
an
move just a
idea
second
of the-
so they can see.
I literally took a file folder, and every name I came across, I put on the tab of that folder. I did this for the first years of my research and filled 5 file boxes. That was just up to 1940. That's just 1940. I mean, we're talking what, 85 years, more that I haven't gotten into. So I how many more file boxes would I need? And I decided that I wanted those file folders to represent building, and they will come, the stories that I could put in there. So I started doing that, and then I realized I wanted to take it a different direction when I realized that the Negro Star in Wichita wrote articles about El Dorado that didn't appear in El Dorado papers. And I do due diligence I love those papers. And so I do the hard copy or, to really find these articles. And El Dorado, for the most part, could, in the notebook that Janelle has, you wouldn't even begin to fill that little notebook right there. What was published about the Black community in El Dorado back from the beginning of our history. These notebooks, on the other hand, represent the research I've done so far that have come from the Negro Star in Wichita, the Black, I'm losing track of the name of the paper in Oklahoma, the Chicago Defender. I have a wonderful book about the Chicago Defender that was started in 1905, all about the Black community. But and then the Kansas City paper was the Call, and Harlan's, both his mother and his grandmother, both Maud and Gladys, wrote as well as Goldie, your dad's stepsister. So I'm jumping way ahead because we got
I know, it's okay.
out there.
You're good.
But I do want to just play off of what Harlan's talking about as far as to help you understand what hidden history means. How do you know what you don't even know? If you're opening up the paper and you're always reading the papers and it's white news, you're not seeing anything. When it was Black news, a lot of times it was criminal reports and so forth. Not the most positive. It was just mind-boggling to me to realize that all of the news I was getting about El Dorado was coming from everywhere else, these large papers. And that wasn't just because El Dorado was an anomaly. That was across the country, communities, Black communities would once a week have their reporter submit the news to the Black Dispatch, the Negro Star in Wichita, the Call in Kansas City, and the Chicago Defender. Chicago. So I'm reading all these wonderful stories of the rich lives of the Black community, of my community, from Chicago paper, Oklahoma paper, Kansas City paper, Wichita paper. And so these are just maybe half or a third of what I have to come, because those pages are tabbed. They represent articles I still need to transcribe from online. So those will continue to fill up, and I will be filling more and more notebooks. So anyway, I don't want to take up all the time with that, but just to give you some context to put what Harlan's talking about, that this is truly a hidden history, a rich history, our Black heritage in El Dorado. So.
Okay. Because we've covered so many questions within.
Can I interject this?
Yeah.
So the cards that you have,
Oh, yes.
any questions that you want to jot down, every once in a while, hold one up and we'll take your cards and questions you have that you would like answered. So feel free to use those cards for that.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. Sonja, for you, I wanted to ask, was there a moment when, I know you kind of touched on this a little bit, that something you discovered, and maybe a specific thing that you discovered, challenged what you thought you knew about growing up here?
Okay. Well, I'm 6'7", you know how that's so popular because it's 6'7". So I've been there 62 years. And so and maybe female in the way I was brought up as well, violence was not a part of my life, physical violence, getting into fights or watching fights. So violence was, I'm just pretty polypurebred when it comes to that, as far as that hasn't been my experience. And so racial violence, I didn't have any stories. I mean, you know about incidental things about guys fighting in school or whatever, but racial violence to a large degree. And so when I came across a news article, I was absolutely flabbergasted. The governor of Kansas wrote to the leadership of El Dorado, about an incident that had happened in El Dorado on December 12th, 1916. And to know that the governor, this had caught his attention, and then it was all reported all across the state of Kansas. And on December 12th, 1916, one afternoon, it was a white oil worker who went into a black shoe shining parlor, barber shop, by a man named T.A. Kennedy, a black man who was so successful he opened up a second business around the corner. And this is in the area of the Coots, between the Coots and Walters, in that area. And this man, J.C. Majors, who was an oil field worker, went in and agitated the black proprietor, T.A. Kennedy, and he was wanting to agitate, get something going. And so he talked back to the white man, J.C. Majors, and J.C. Majors was just waiting for that. So you should know better than that, I think, And he turned around and walked out, and T.A. Kennedy, there are varying reports, but he kind of tossed a shoe or something, hit him in the back of the head. There was not a physical brawl right then. It was more like he hit something, and that's all that guy wanted. We're talking about before the internet. It was 1916. If it was viral and you put it out on social media and everybody be there like that, they'd already set it up. Within a short time, 200, and they're written about all across Kansas in different papers, white oil workers. It wasn't like, your local person that had a grocery store with oil. And they were organized and ready to go. They were just waiting for that incident. They didn't really know when and where, but they were ready. And they were already organized in that way. And they descended upon the black community with guns and violence. And nobody was killed, but they shot up every business that was owned by the black community, any business that was frequented by the black community, and it just terrorized the community for hours. And it began, like I said, in the 100 block of North Main, moved towards the city building. And in that area, there was a man named Claiborne Easter who had a rooming house, and they really shot that up. And there were women and children in that rooming house, and they were reported in the paper running to the woods like rabbits. I mean, you can look back on something when you know nobody was killed. You go, well, nobody was killed. I mean, the terrorism of not knowing that, though, the gunfire is all around. They're shooting at you and destroying your homes, your businesses. This happened in El Dorado. Nobody to this day tells me that they've ever heard that story. I mean, the oldest of the old, John Kramer, a good friend of mine, 100 years old. He never had heard this story.
His first
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
My grandfather was here.
Yes, right.
But they
Edward
never spoke of
Toplin.
it.
Yeah. So now I think that they actually maybe had came up from Oklahoma just a little bit after that. If I looked at when they came, this was 1916, because I wondered about that. I wondered if they were. I'm trying to, have put in place who was here during that time. That's really significant because it was oil. I came to El Dorado because my father had a job at Skelly. My husband and his dad, refinery employees. That's the bread and butter. I don't have a bone to pick about oil, but I do when it comes to our hidden history, because that incident was such an act of terrorism. It was called upon by the governor of Kansas as such. He said, you need to bring those perpetrators to justice. You got to find them, bring them to justice. It never happened. They did arrest 8, bring them in for questioning. Nothing happened. there's in the city regulations that you should have reparations in acts of violence like that, not just natural disaster. So the rooming house owners, Claiborne and Mary Easter, their daughter, filed a claim, turned in. They said it was just outside the city limits because it was in the fairgrounds. And just really tragic in that way. So once again, having that meeting with Harlan was so important because I knew about that story and I needed him to help me have some perspective on the Black community and their achievements and contributions and celebrating and raising them up. So
I didn't know if you wanted to ask him
Yeah.
this or.
yes,
Oh,
you
yeah,
bet.
yeah,
and
for sure.
Anytime, that's what we're looking for.
Well,
Yeah.
My question would be, in your conversations a moment ago, you were saying basically that you were left alone. You were in that community, you were left alone. And then you're talking about the violence that was occurring. And then I think about the Ku Klux Klan that was here in El Dorado, that was in Augusta, that was in Douglas, and all those places. So that type of, how long did that type of violence continue where the Klan was actually doing something here?
Do you know?
Was there any Klan activity that you were aware of?
Not that I was aware of, but if you'll give me a minute, it was so hidden from us. Our parents, who may have been involved in, that type of activity, or coming, because El Dorado was really a segregated town. You couldn't go to the movies. If you went to the movie, you had to sit in a certain place. You couldn't go to a restaurant. I mean, Woolworth or any of the rest of the restaurants you couldn't go to. So there was that, you knew what was here, but it was kind of hidden from us. Our parents were involved, and they had to do the same thing we did, and we just followed them. We couldn't go to the swimming pool. There were just so many things that we couldn't go to, and we went to school. As one thing about El Dorado, segregation was like, I'm trying to figure out a way to describe it. We didn't get involved unless it was something that you were going to socialize with white people. Like, could we go to school with them? We went to all the other activities, but it was school and that. No, we all went to the same school. I remember hearing this when I talked to some of my friends that I went to school with, and we talk about these same things. And I'd get to say, well, we couldn't go to the swimming pool. Yes, you could. I said, when are you talking about? In 55 or something like that, they first integrated these schools. Not the schools, but the pool and the social things. And I'd get to telling them about, well, when we go to the El Dorado Theater, we had to sit on the other side of the aisle. It was a 3-aisle seating arrangement. So when we went, and here's the other thing, the funny thing about that, we all played Little League Baseball. If we won the state championship one year with the Elks Club. They sponsored us. And we could go to the movie, and we all sat together. That was it. After that, we couldn't. We couldn't even go to the bathroom. There was a certain place you had to go to the bathroom. And a lot of people just thought that was strange and that's the other thing about Black people. It had been such a part of their life, our lives, that we never paid much attention to it. And the only reason we got to go to the swimming pool was as we got older, and we had to in order to swim, we had to go out to the lake or go to the river, and we all learned how to swim at the lake or something like that. I mean, how many of you remember the swinging bridge in that area out there? Well, there was little places you could go in and go swimming, but that was the only place, a supervised place. And so it was, and all my friends, you feel like you hear these things on the radio, or because TV was just getting into when we were kids. And you hear about all these different things going on around the country, and you say, man, what's this? How come this happened in Wichita and we didn't know about it over here in El Dorado? And so you just accepted it. And that was the strange thing. And I learned another thing, because most of my relatives grew up in Tulsa in Oklahoma. And down there, it was obvious, you know. But here's the strange thing about that area. People did not know or didn't talk about the riot down there. My great uncle, who was from Tulsa, born and raised there, he was the first mayor of Greenwood City. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Greenwood. Thomas Gentry. He was an entrepreneur. He is a realtor, and to this day, excuse me, to now there's a section in North Tulsa, which is a place that mostly populated by Black people. Greenwood, and I'm sure you've heard a lot about Greenwood, but he was, like I said, he was a realtor, and we'd go down there and visit with him. He never said a word about that, and he lived in Greenwood. And here's a strange thing about that. They had a lot of barbecue businesses in North Tulsa. And a lot of white people came to North Tulsa to buy barbecue. As a matter of fact, they could go in, the white people could, and sit anywhere they wanted. Black people couldn't do that in a Black-owned restaurant. So I guess I'm trying to say this, is that the same thing happened here in El Dorado. We never understood till we got old enough to understand. And I think it was simply because we just didn't, you grow up like that and it becomes an everyday occurrence. And I had some of my best friends, I know we were talking about the McCoys. And did he just pass away not too long, David? Yeah. And until he passed away, we were just close friends. But at the same time, I had other friends who I could go, we stayed at each other's homes, you know. Raymond Smith, I don't know how many of you knew him, but they lived out there where the old refinery used to be, out there on, what is that? Topeka, yeah. The El Dorado refinery, I think they call it there. But otherwise, we got along fine. And so I think that, like I said, El Dorado was a good place to grow up, except for those, you know, things. But you accepted it, and so you didn't even have to talk about it, you know, because it wasn't going to change. So we just accepted it. So anyway, and if you have any questions, I'm getting old.
Harlan, you're fabulous. You just enrich every conversation, and that's why I started. That's how everything started for me, was Harlan.
I promise. I've gotten lots of stories.
And his granddaughter last night was asking him questions, getting him ready for today. So he had Allie's support. Carolyn,
Were you aware of the Dockham sit-in?
I beg your pardon?
Were you aware of the Dockham sit-in?
No.
The sit-in in Wichita.
which was the very first
Yeah.
sit-in.
He would have been in Vietnam. Or were you gone?
What year?
Yeah, contrary to what's reported nationally, you know, the Dockham was the first. Yes, it was before that. The Dockham in Wichita, the Dockham drugstore.
Oh, I remember the
Yes,
Dockham
yes.
drugstore.
And
Yeah.
so, and Galen Veazey.
Yeah, I knew the
So he was
Veazeys.
part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of my friends were a part of the other one, and I can't remember the drugstore, because there was the first big one was in Wichita.
Was it Rexall?
It might have been Rexall.
Dockham was a Rexall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a Rexall, the parent company.
It meant to his business that Mr. Dockham probably said.
Yeah.
"Sit where they
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
I'm losing business.
Yeah.
He had about six stores in Wichita.
Yeah. But this, and I wish I could remember the drugstore, because there were several of them in Wichita, and it was a sit-in. In fact, I think it made the national news.
Oh,
So, yeah, and I can't remember what the name of it was, but Wichita was just as bad as all the other towns. It was not the past. It wasn't just nothing ever happened. But people just didn't like to talk about it, and I think they felt if you don't say a whole lot about it, people won't bother you, and that was wrong, because you could see by what you were talking about Dalcom and other places there. That they had problems, but it took high school kids my age, and so it finally got to the point that what was the name of the? No, I'm talking about the legislation that brought Browns versus yeah, and so after that time, things got better. Not good, but better, because that didn't help anything. Housing here in El Dorado, over at what we used to call just across 12th Street, the housing area over there.
Like Stone Edition?
Stone Edition, yeah. You couldn't move over there. That's just a block away from your
Across
house.
the street. You were one end of the block and I was at the other.
Yeah. And so, and you just didn't try back then to do anything different, except, as I said, going to the swimming pool. That was a big thing, because after school was out, that was when you could go to the pool opened about that same time. And so we used to try to go down there, because a lot of our friends were always there, and they'd be asking, how come you guys ain't going to the swimming pool? And we'd say, my folks wouldn't let me, or something like that. And then eventually, my dad got upset about it. He's quite the activist when it came to stuff like that. And he said, you can't go to the pool. And just because he never went to the pool, he just figured we couldn't either. And so it was, but.
And what did he do?
What did he went down? I don't know. I remember he was either city manager or the mayor. I can't remember. Raymond Tarrant. Any of y'all remember the Tarrants? You knew his wife. Okay. I think he was he the mayor, or was he?
He was city manager. It seems like you remember you saying that your dad called the city
Yeah,
manager.
yeah. Well, he did a lot more than calling. He went down. Y'all would have to know my father. He was not the kind of guy you want to mess with. But anyway, but he went down and he told him, he said, look, Raymond, I've known you practically our whole life. And my kids went down there to go to the pool. And I'm not going to name the name of the guy who ran the pool. Most of you know who that was. He ran everything here in El Dorado, as far as city ball teams and all that. But anyway, and he talked to him. He said, look, my kids are going to go to that pool. And they had a long conversation. I'm repeating what my dad told me, what I've heard from other places. And so, and he said, Bertie, okay, we can talk about this again. He said, as I said, I'm not going to repeat his name, but they're going tomorrow. And so Dad made sure we went, because he took us down. Well, he didn't go that far, but he might as well have, because he scared the devil out of the manager. And so anyway, but that was how they solved problems like that. And probably I have another little story that somebody asked, because we didn't have a barbershop. Well, there were barbershops, but we didn't go to those barbershops. And so I don't know who it was, but one day somebody asked, Verdi, how come you don't get your hair cut here in El Dorado? He said, well, there's nobody here that knows how to cut my hair. And he said, well, you've got your kids going to the pool, and you can go to whatever restaurant you want to go to now. He said, look, my hair is a certain texture that I wouldn't let a white man cut my hair. so So we continued to go to Wichita to get our hair cut. But anyway, there are things like that just kind of sometimes you just take for granted, you know? And so that's why I said growing up in El Dorado, a lot of things didn't affect us to the degree that it affected even the people in Wichita. And so like I said, when I left El Dorado and got involved and got to meeting other people, other Black people, it was just a different thing, you know. And a lot of us who were in the military back during the Vietnam War, a lot of the kids that got in the military were Black because they were leaving the South to get in a better life. You got 3 cots and a hot, that's the thing. But anyway, that gives you some insight into how we grew up and how those kinds of things affected us and didn't affect us, you know. And so I can tell you one more story.
I want it.
You want it?
He can go on.
We will have to
Well,
stop him.
I just wish my memory was a little better than it is now. But the fact of the matter is, we all went out to the lake. You remember the old lake, a lot of you? There were 2 lakes out there. There was Lake El Dorado and Lake Bluestem. And so in the summertime, we would go out there and have picnics, and and a lot of us had friends in Wichita, Black friends naturally, and so we would invite them over to have the picnics. So we normally it was around the 4th of July.
What year did this start? Do you know?
In late 1950s.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've been wondering.
Yeah. And, we'd done that for, a few years. Nothing ever happened. But I guess as we got older and in high school, we got a lot of Black friends in Wichita. And so we had notified everybody in Wichita that we're going to have this 4th of July thing. And so make sure you guys come over. Never thinking that there would be a problem. So we got over there. I can remember almost specifically, but it was a Saturday afternoon. And there used to be little cabins right there close to the lake. I think they were little stone cabins or something like that. They're not there any longer. But anyway, you had to not rent, but sign up and have things at that cabin. You had barbecue grills and all that out there. What happened, the word got passed around, even the kids that we hadn't notified. They spread the word around Wichita, and it ended up there's over 100 kids came over. And the police were out. I don't know how they found out about it, but they were out on the edge of town. And back in those days, there was no 254. You had to go to Wichita through Towanda. There was just a one lane road, into Wichita. Well, they were sitting out there. Cops were sitting out there. I don't know how they found out about it. I think somebody told me they saw all these Sedgwick County tags coming toward El Dorado. So by the time they got out there, the kids, there was cops all around out there. And so we were just out there having a good time, playing ball and all that. And they came out, and they didn't ask us to just leave. They brought out dogs and had told us it was time that was time for us to go. There was another thing where Verdi Tomlin got in. That's my father. got involved. You have to remember he grew up here, and everybody in town knew him. I mean, he was a good guy. He never caused any problems, and his kids never caused any problems. We were afraid sometimes you're even afraid to take a root beer. That's how religious he was. But anyway, that's my little story then. But if you have any questions or anything.
What
follow up what you're saying. Your dad got involved. What extent did he take that from the police with the dogs? And your dad, what did he?
He went directly. He knew one thing: you can't go downtown and talk to anybody, that wasn't in government
Yeah.
or had some sway with the government. And so he knew the mayor. He knew anybody that was important. Clifford Stone, who owned the bank, he and Daddy went to school together, and he could get Clifford to do whatever he wanted, Because I think at the one time he might have been one of the richest guys in town. He owned everything. They named
Walnut Valley Bank.
Walnut Valley Bank. Yeah. So he was connected, but it was through his own personality and his forcefulness. He's just kind of guy you just didn't argue with, And so, but he was always a good guy, and he could get things done that way, So,
Basically, it didn't happen again.
nope.
Harlan, wasn't there an award that your dad was given that I have a picture of your, didn't Clifford Stone, isn't there a picture of your dad being awarded something from the city?
I think so, but I don't have that information.
I wish I had it, but
Yeah.
so I know Clifford, and it's kind of interesting. He was a POW during World War II. You just wonder, and serving with other Black servicemen, and you just kind of wonder what he came back to El Dorado and felt. But I've loved that picture. It was honoring Bertie Tomlin for his contributions.
Yeah. And but I'd heard that, but Dad wasn't the kind of guy he'd come with. I did this and I did that. Except if I did something wrong. But the other thing about Clifford.
Hold on just a second. Did somebody have a question?
I think that,
Liz?
yeah.
Okay, the area you're talking about was the Riverside area? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, what about the Mexican community that was there?
With us.
Yeah.
Can you,
The Riverside area.
Oh, he's got tons of stories.
can you talk a little bit about that? Because
Yeah.
I'm assuming that they were probably in the same boat.
We lived next door to each other. On Cherokee Street, if any of y'all are familiar with El Dorado, okay. That area on the northeast side of town, I think that's it. And the river runs adjacent to it on the,
Dillon's and
from Dillon's
yeah.
east, right? Yeah. And so apparently that was why they named it Riverside. And something happened that called me to question that. What is the name of that park now?
Girl Scout or North Main Park?
North Main Park.
What?
North Main Park.
Okay. For years, that was Riverside. And it was known that most of the Blacks, Mexicans, lived in that area. But they called it Riverside. And what's bad about that is every summer when it began to rain, it flooded. You could not get to Riverside on Main Street. You had to drive out. 77 is
All around the lake.
Go around the lake and come down 12th Street. Is that? I think that's yeah. And so it was pretty much left alone. And the roads were basically the same as they were back then. All, dirt roads, gravel roads, whatever. And I was really surprised that one section out there, Stone Addition, had paved roads. But you crossed 12th Street over to Riverside, and there was it was gravel, and then when it rained a lot, I don't know how we got back and forth. Well, Dad had to always go out because he did a lot of work downtown, but he always had to go out and around and then back home.
What families did you grow up with? What Hispanic families?
Well,
The Janelle said, what Hispanic Mexican families does he remember from the Riverside area?
I used to remember everybody because I played with all of them.
I
The
remember
Savanis, the
Gomez.
Gomez,
Valdez.
Valdez, and one of them, do you know the artist?
That was the artist?
Yeah.
De Leon?
No,
Oh, okay, I knew De Leon.
so I can't remember his name, but he was a national artist. He a lot of his stuff sold, and that, and so anyway, who else? Anyway, I can't remember them all, but it was quite a few. They all lived on from Oak Street up on Oak and going west on 12th Street and all through that and going back to the south were both basically Mexicans and blacks and poor white people.
Right.
you know, and they weren't any better off, financially. We all lived in what they back then called shotgun houses, And the reason they call them shotgun houses is because you could open up the front door and look from the front door all the way back through to the back of it. Ma'am,
Were those lease houses, the shotgun houses, were they oil lease houses from Oil Hill?
the house where my folks live now, my brother lives in our old house up on Oak Street. They were there, I think, during the Depression, because a lot of people, they built those shotgun houses just so you got people, and you didn't have to live close to a black person. You didn't have to live close to a Mexican. They were cheap. They were so cheap. My dad bought 4 of them right there on Cherokee. And when any of his friends came, they could get those houses for cheap. He was a businessman. But anyway, yeah, that it was just a nice place to live. It was Saturday morning, and I imagine a lot of you are around my age. Saturdays after school was out for the summer, you could have a good time. There was no color problems. We had gangs, but they were all integrated gangs. And I imagine, but there were certain things that we all, did together. We played baseball together. All the good baseball players, for the most part, live out on Cherokee and Oak and all that. And athletes, I don't know how many of you remember the Hayeses, Joe Hayes and okay.
Well, and also Lively. We forgot about
Lively.
Joe Lively.
Yeah, my best friend.
Oh my gosh. Charles Lively.
He's like my brother. But anyway, all of them lived out on what we call the hill. Anything past Central and South, we call the hill. And the other majority of blacks lived out there. The Livelies and I can't remember some of the Rices, the Wilders lived out there. So, it was integrated to the street you lived on and what direction.
And that was the reason, that was around the Washington School area.
There you go.
Reuben Waller owned, who was the Buffalo Soldier, and that is one of the people that Harlan let me know about.
And almost forgot.
A decade ago, started with Reuben. Then I became friends with his great grandson in New York. But Reuben Waller owned several of those homes there on Atchison, South Atchison, across from the Family Life Center now, but it was Washington. And Harlan was the one that told me that was called the Hill. He said, "Well, have you heard of the Hill?" And I said, "Oh." And so anyway, I think that we're at the end of this.
Yeah.
We need to close this. Yes.
Yeah.
So what do you want to do? Okay.
Oh, are there questions on
Yes,
there?
yes.
I don't know, because I'm using my phone to.
Mm.
Yep. I lost.
Nope, that's okay. Okay, it is 1 o'clock, so if anybody would like to sneak out, you are more than welcome to. I will move the camera so that you have the ability to do that. Our speakers have said that they are okay with staying for a little bit to answer questions, so you are more than welcome to stay and ask any questions that you have. I hope you all enjoyed our speaker series for this month. Next month, we have a couple speakers coming in to talk about 3.5 bank robberies that happened in Portland.
And a half?
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh,
Does anybody out there have a card or?
had you heard about
the
the one in Newton?
I did.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering.
Yeah. There's, I think there were a couple in El Dorado too.
My
Yeah.
question is, did things just mutually get better after Brown versus Education, and then like it just kind of took off from there and got better in a
No.
sense?
No.
No.
In fact, I was very shocked when Les brought up the Ku Klux Klan. In El Dorado in the early 20s, when the second coming of the Ku Klux Klan, you had the Birth of a Nation, the movie, and that was when that violence happened the next year. In El Dorado, it was after the Birth of a Nation movie came out. It was a big thing. People were coming all over from Butler County to come and watch it at the show with you and her. So then in the early 20s, when the next wave of the Ku Klux Klan came, in El Dorado alone, there was a membership of 800. In Butler County, a membership of 3,000. I grew up going to the First United Methodist Church, and in the Ku Klux Klan newspaper was a little ad from back in the day, the First United Methodist pastor, proudly proclaiming, that what a wonderful organization this was, philanthropic organization. When I was shocked, I was a graduate of El Dorado High School in '76, and one of my classmates told me that she was on a date back in the early mid-70s. And the guy said, she thought he was just blowing smoke and trying to impress her in the wrong way, but he said, I'm a member of the KKK. And she said, no, I have the robe and everything. And, he said, let me show you something. And he took her out north of town to where they were having a bonfire rally in their full garb. And so the Ku Klux Klan never went away. They just were very accepted at the time. Literally, they were thought of as a philanthropic organization. And then during the Capricorn Festival, they had their parade. They were part of the parade. Their horses even had the hoods with the little holes for the eyes. They were fully garbed KKK. I mean, it was very. I'm not saying everybody accepted them. I'm not saying, but they were literally in the parades, and they were preachers and teachers and lawyers and doctors and their neighbors and women, had the auxiliary as well. One thing that I wanted to add when we talk about the hidden history and how can something be hidden when it's in plain sight? There is a beloved journalist that was not born here but was raised here in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Went all through El Dorado, graduated from El Dorado High School, very, very, very prominent, well known. And he wrote his autobiography. And in it, if I hadn't been studying what I was studying, I wouldn't have known who he was referring to, that he beat him up. Had to show him this black kid, had to show this colored lad, who was boss. And I was just appalled, this was a man, and I'm not going to use the names for different reasons, but you can fill in the blanks. But book lists have his name at the top, and so he wrote this in his autobiography, and I think part of it was because he was the narrative is that he ran the Ku Klux Klan out of Kansas single-handedly. But I think that in writing his autobiography, he was wanting to be honest about what his roots had been in racism and racial violence on his own part, himself and on him against this other black kid. And so a white woman wrote an abridged version of his autobiography. She wrote the abridged version. She cut out whole passages, including that, from when she did her version of his autobiography. And that didn't do a justice to this man. It was terrible what he did as a young person. beating up another kid just by virtue of his color. But he did some wonderful things in his lifetime, but the narrative has been taken in a direction that needs to be corrected.
It was like kind of glossed over.
Yes, literally took out of his when she had this published as his autobiography with the abridged version. I thought, what does abridged mean anymore? The whole passages were taken out. I bought both copies so that I could do a side by side page. But one thing that and I want to take questions, but to play off of what Harlan's talked about, his grandmother and his mother both wrote for the newspapers. His mother was Gladys Tomlin, his grandmother Maud Tomlin Patton. One of the things that was really extraordinary to me was that I came across many wonderful stories about achievements, and women in particular. And one was more recently was Golda Lee Patton, was a member of the 688 Central Postal Directory that was almost, and there were a couple of Puerto Ricans, but for the most part, they were a black battalion that was formed in World War II to go to Europe and sort through air hangers of mail that we've been languishing for years. Tyler Perry writes, he comes up with a movie called The 688 that comes out, big movie. She's buried in Sunset Cemetery. She lived in El Dorado. She's never been acknowledged. There's nothing visibly out anywhere when we have Memorial Day celebrations, and I contacted the FW, the American Legion. And I guess what I'm saying is not to pack myself up, but to end like, how can we do better? We know better, so let's do better. That's not original with me, but when you know better, you do better. So you just say, this is a part of your families are that way. You should be that way yourself individually. Like I know better. I'm going to do better. And so I was at a meeting almost 2 weeks ago about celebrating America's 250 years. In different organizations, just brainstorming. How do we want to do that in El Dorado to celebrate America's 250 years? And my suggestion was that in every place, and Harlan brought this out at the very beginning, where are the Black members of our community in the audience, but so that's something else. But I'm talking about when you invite, places are welcoming to all, the diversity. Ask yourself when you go to a meeting, like that meeting I went to, everybody was white. There were a mixture of men and women, but I said, ask yourself. That's what I'd encourage you to do. When you go to meetings, when you go to your organizations, you go to church, you go into a restaurant that's very popular, but you say, I only see people. Why? There are a lot of people that are quite happy with that. I would like to think that we have moved to a different place and that we all want to be more inclusive. So anyway, what other questions are?
Oh, can I add something else?
Yeah, you bet.
I said it, and all of a sudden. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I just want to make sure it goes up to
Okay.
your mouth real close.
Anyway, I wanted to add one more thing. We had maybe 200-300 Black people in this town, and they mostly live over there on Riverside and on the hill. But we had 4 churches, Black churches. Yeah, one of them is at 3rd and what?
Are you talking about the original church? It's on Star and
the Second Baptist?
Yeah,
Second
Second
Star.
Baptist. Right.
The Demos
They own it.
and have
Right.
a memorial there for it.
But we grew up in that church, and it's right there on the corner of what was it again? Star
and Second.
And Second. That's a red building, and I think it's kind of a social gather place now.
Mm-hmm.
The other
really neat. It looks like it's been a private home years ago. Antiques were there.
Yeah.
But when you drive by, you'll know for sure because the cornerstone is
Right.
there.
Right.
It says established 1924,
Something
whatever,
like that.
Second Baptist Church.
Yeah.
And once again, those articles that Harlan's mother and grandmother wrote are just key. These are being sent to Chicago, to Kansas City, to Oklahoma, to the Negro Star in Wichita, but they lived here in El Dorado, but they had to send them out in order to get the word out. But here through history, over 100 years later, I'm able to access that on the internet. It's through newspapers.com. And what was wonderful was that is where the strength came, was through the churches.
Right.
It was really through the churches.
And one other thing too, and then I'll quit. The first minister at that church, the Second Baptist Church, was Reverend Simon. Did you see his name? From Wichita. Because I don't think they could get black ministers to come and live here because they knew about, El Dorado. Not that it was that bad, but still.
Yeah.
And so all of us were baptized and were members of that church. My grandmother, everybody. But it's amazing. You don't have that many black people that lived here to support that kind of church, but all of them went to different churches. And, after I got older, I said, wait a minute. My best friend goes to the Methodist church, which was half a block away. And the other half went to the Holiness Church, which was just up the corner.
Are you talking about Lane Chapel?
There.
The one that was near your church was Lane Chapel?
Waller? Yeah.
Okay.
No, well, he was a Methodist. He was a minister there, I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, the other one was the Holiness Church. And I think they call it the Church of God now. Was right up the street.
The Church of God in Christ.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see how, and my grandmother, bless her heart, she died, she was 95 years old. And all of her friends were of they went to different churches. And as I got older, it dawned on me, I said, Grandma, why don't you just have one church for, if you want, just have one black church. But you got all these churches here. And you know what she told me?
What'd she say?
I didn't go into no church that don't believe in baptizing you by dunking you.
Oh.
I said, what? Water is water. But, and she was, I'm not going to go to a Catholic church. I am not going to the Methodist church. And it was just amazing how and they were truthfully involved in that church. And so I said, my Lord. And even after we got older and I'd gone away and come back, I said, when are you ever going to get together? She was, like I said, in her late 90s then. She said, Harlan, I want to go to heaven. That's as much as I'm going to say about that.
What about that Riverside Church?
The one up by Antioch, there's Antioch and then Riverside, those two churches on Oak Street.
Mm-hmm. On Oak Street?
Yeah, the Antioch where we went, where Grandma went, and then there's Riverside.
Oh, yeah, that's the Church of God in Christ.
And he lives in Wichita. They do not live in El Dorado.
Mm-hmm.
They had a,
I think it's that.
that's a wonderful thing to bring up. Her name's, she went, I'm not really sure what happened, but she's a wonderful person. Janelle, I think you visited with her from Thompson.
Oh, yes.
Yes, right. And she was wanting to go back to that time in my research where people in the Black community were having, they call them Emancipation Day picnics and Juneteenth, when emancipation, and then they would celebrate. El Dorado had what were called Emancipation Day picnics. And I realized that I think there's a disconnect in the history, the understood history, because I just have a feeling that between El Dorado days and when the Emancipation Day picnic stopped, that it was connected to celebrating emancipation. Well, and then maybe over time you forget what these reunions are really about, other than the food and getting together and whatever. But this woman her husband's the pastor of the church you're talking about on Oak Street towards Bell Vista Cemetery, had the Civic Center rented and wanted to have a very wonderful celebration, pretty elegant too. And I told her, I said, I want to help you develop a culture that will help support that, because it just didn't, I don't think it ended up really going anywhere. And I think they had a, maybe a small gathering themselves, but at the heart of what she was talking about was, I want it to be embrace everyone. I want it to be a Black celebration, or, the whites have their charity balls or whatever, but, I want it to be a celebration of all of us. And I said, man, that's exactly what my research has been all about, is doing that. So I think that the takeaway to leave this, and I thank you so much for coming, is that when people say, well, what can we do to make things, but there exists back in the archives. And this is nothing. I love all staff through all the generations of staff that has been at this museum. It's systemic. It's not about one person or one group of staff. It's systemic, about just not thinking what's missing here. Back in collections are 2 folk art pieces by Henry Claiborne that are incredible. And they were brought out, dusted off. They were donated by his son, Louis. And they're beautiful folk art pieces created by this gentleman, Henry Claiborne, that lived in El Dorado. Is actually the great-grandfather of our grandson. And he did this beautiful work. One is a community choir, and the other is like a soul jazz. Did you ever see them?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got the paper.
Yeah, they're like paper mache and things hand carved to the unbelievable, incredible detail. And they need to be brought out. You need to be, let's celebrate anything that we have in the way of art, photographs, stories that are accessible, so that once again, when you walk through the doors, do you feel welcome? Or is it and does it still tell the story more than oil? Because this museum did not start as a museum, it started as a historical society, historical museum. So there's more of a story to tell than oil. Money talks and nobody wants. I understand money is important.
People have blinders and they don't.
I think that there truly are people that want to keep things status quo.
After you're done.
Yeah, I think there are people that do want to keep status quo, but I think it's more like what I said a lot of times. Whether it's blinders or just you get busy and you're involved in your own world, and if it's not broken, don't fix it. My world is not broken. I think it's broken and it needs to be fixed. I think we pay the price when we're not inclusive. And our children, their education should include more than from a white perspective. So that's something that I continue to feel very strongly about. Yeah, sure.
So what's your vision going forward? To see a spot in the museum dedicated to the history of the Black community? What are you working on something?
For
she's-
me, myself,
She's got lots.
I think that's, I would be totally open to being welcome to conversations about that, because I've had them for years and years and years and years. And there's just a point that you realize that, okay, where can I be the most effective? And I'm an educator. I spent 40 years at the college, that 33 years on campus. So, I mean, that's at the heart of mine. I think I said this to you the other day at that meeting, that I really want to, what I see a place for me is to take into the schools or include school children in educating the youth about Black history, and specifically, about our community, and bringing it alive, like with Readers Theater, music, and there are members of the community in El Dorado, the Garlands on the coast. One of them, she brought that idea up years ago when we went for brunch, and I said, I don't know anything. Bailey's our fine arts, theater person, and I tossed it out to her, and she's got her plate full. But I want to find people who are interested in educating our youth. And that can take place here or wherever, but so Bailey, I'm sure heard your idea, and I'm open, or her question, and I'm open to anything that helps the museum grow in that direction. But I'm moving in the direction of education wherever it happens.
Can I say one thing?
Can I hold
I just
on?
want to thank Sonja for having me come over.
Is it done okay?
Appreciate it.
You're a big part of history, Harlan.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
I also thank you, Sonja, so much. And kind of to the point of what my dad had been saying earlier, it's like, you know, I get told these stories and I grew up with these stories. I grew up with the families that have stayed here. And it's kind of like he said, you know, you grow up in it, you don't really talk about it. Nobody in your town really seems that interested. And so then it kind of gets lost. And then you realize, you know, your town was also built, the beauty of it was built by Blacks, the Hispanic community doing so much around this place, as well as the white community too. And it also says a lot to El Dorado. Maybe we didn't talk about it as much out loud, but also my dad came back for a reason, because El Dorado is such a special place. And there's a lot that, you know, there's a lot of people here that are advocating for change. And you don't have to, you know, come up here and do things like we're doing, but you can, you know, just read or just have those simple conversations, or reach out to a neighbor, or put yourself, you know, somewhere that's a little bit different. I remember one time, this is just, sorry, I talked too, because I'm from El Dorado, right? So the Black community that I've been around is little, very small. So in college, going to Butler, that was a new experience for me, as there was a lot of Black kids and that I got to know and kind of step into that community outside other than my family. And then going to Wichita State. And one time, and I don't, you know, safety is always important. But there's one time I was like, you know what, I'm going to put myself in a different position. And I went into a gas station that maybe I shouldn't have gone into. But it all went fine. Everything was fine. I was just scared of the way it looked on the outside. But everybody inside was just amazing. And it was down there in not the best neighborhood. But it's kind of things like that. Again, safety first, but just putting yourself in just a different place. Maybe it's a library in a different city, or just somewhere where you're going to see different people and have interactions with different people. And then just in El Dorado in general, I don't know what I was going to say. ADHD lost me.
We should have a celebration.
Well, we did have, as a thing, I don't know if you've heard of it. We used to have a play,
Here, I'll hold it, Dad.
every 2 years, we had El Dorado Day, which all the Black people that had lived there, those that are still alive and were able to get here. And unfortunately,
Well, they still have it a little bit.
yeah, but there aren't enough people now, Black people, that we weren't going to be able to do it this year. Hopefully we can revive it. But that was the way all of us got together. As a matter of fact, there was one person did you ever?
Well, I think the Browns and the Rices are working on it too.
Oh, okay. But Mr. Ben Ezel.
Oh, I never knew Ben, but okay, he was your uncle, right?
No, he was just a friend.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I know the name.
Yeah.
I've seen the name in my.
But every Veterans Day, they put the little flags up on the things downtown. He was a World War I veteran. And as far as I know, he lived to be almost 100 years old.
Yeah.
You know. And I looked up there and I said, wait a minute, I fought in Vietnam. I have a picture up there.
Right.
A lot of my friends, the Livelies, a lot of them were up there. And I said, how do you get your picture? I mean, I'm proud of the fact. I mean, there were a lot of people who said, well, Vietnam. I was proud to go.
Right.
You know.
Harlan, I think, Bailey, you know, or the veterans, are those purchased by families?
Yes, they're purchased by families through El Dorado Main Street. Craig Yargan is the contact person, and he is happy to, there's people who buy 4 or 5 of those because they have service members. So I could give you his contact info.
I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
We should have something inclusive in that.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I think, to Sonja's point too, just kind of, okay, we look up there, right? And you're like, you know, there's got to be more people of color that's served. Maybe we can find them, you know? Yeah, like seeking them out, because, you know, and kind of given to that hidden part, when this first started, did they, you know, make sure Black families knew that that was an option to call, not, you know, to call or get those out there. I don't know when that started, but at the same time, and then a lot of the Black families have left, and so like this is new to me, and I've lived here. I've lived here for almost 35 years, and so I think too it's passed down from like family to family through that conversation of like make sure you're doing this. You call this number, and it's not necessarily like something that's just like out there blasted. Like make sure you call, you can call in and get your family's picture put up and stuff like that. So
Yeah, that's an excellent.
I think there's been, the people who have been doing it aren't very like tech savvy,
Uh-huh.
and so they kind of just talk to the people that they know, but if they only know a certain type of person, then it
Yeah.
doesn't
Right.
spread very far, so.
Well,
right.
among the 24 Facebook groups, the one I started with was the Black Heritage of El Dorado, and I love that. It's one that is dear to my heart, and I'm glad you brought that up because I will share that from whatever's there, that information, and I'm glad you brought it up. Yes, Janelle has to get to work. This is not the only conversation. I think that you've all made it such a huge success by being here and your questions and your interest that I know I'm up for future conversations. So thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
And thank you for having me. It's nice to come home and see some people. I know of one or two people.
Kathy Hayes got a new job. She wanted to be here.
Oh,
Kathy Hayes.
oh,
and she
really?
couldn't be here.
Oh, my God.
There you go. I turned that off for you. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Sonja.
Sonja.
Yeah.